Hello, everyone. A few days back, on 28th of May 2026, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016 completed 10 years of its enactment, 10 glorious years. And today, on 3rd of June 2026, Insolvency Law Academy completes 4 years of its establishment. It was sometime in April 2022 that Insolvency Law Academy was conceived during discussions in the room of late Dr. Bibek Deb Roy, who was then the chairperson of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. We were discussing after COVID what measures need to be taken in order to address the aftermath of the COVID when it comes to the economic reforms, including insolvency. It was during this discussion that it emerged that we as a country need a very robust thought leader, a think tank, and a research institution which could provide policy support to the policymakers and also guide the market, the insolvency industry, in putting together a formidable, a modern, dynamic insolvency industry. This led to the formation of Insolvency Law Academy in the following 2 or 3 months. On 3rd June, it was registered in Goa as a public charitable foundation. Ever since, there has been no looking back. With the guidance of a very illustrious global advisory board, Insolvency Law Academy set upon the task of putting together a world-class institute of excellence. In a very short span of time, we were able to create very impressionable footprints. We were able to create a remarkable number of partnerships and collaborations across the country and beyond with some of the most reputed institutions who believed in our vision and were willing to walk shoulder to shoulder in our mission to provide India and beyond a very robust insolvency. What I'm in particular proud of is that we have been able to build a community of scholars, thought leaders, judges, academics, practitioners, even students who have contributed to us as ILA becoming a very fast, rapidly growing community which believes in our goal, in our vision, in our mission, as I mentioned, to produce one of the finest insolvency industry in the country. As I mentioned in the past, that in a very short span of time, we have been able to produce some very impressionable research, thought papers, and much of it has in fact made an impact, some of it even leading to amendments in the insolvency law or regulations, and certainly the development of best practices in the market. Another area where we think we have been able to make very significant progress is to be able to build an infrastructure, an architecture for building scholars of tomorrow, mentoring young scholars, cultivating future leaders, scholars, leaders who will, in various aspects of this architecture, will go on to lead the thought leadership, lead the industry, lead the thought process of us becoming an institution which is contributing to the India's and every single Indian's aspiration of India becoming a Viksit Bharat by 2047. One of the literature which I feel amongst the many futuristic work that we have done is on the intersection between insolvency and climate change, something which nobody is willing to talk about today. It's a very sensitive subject, but I can assure you that we believe at AILA that this is something which is inevitable, and uh, in the in the years to come, not too distant in future, this will catch the imagination of the policymakers, and we will soon see our work getting center stage of attention at the policymakers' desks. Equally, our work on mediation and insolvency, producing a book where some of the finest minds in the country and around the world have contributed essays and in turn contributed in developing some of the finest literature on mediation and insolvency in India, the first of its own kind, which I'm also again very hopeful and confident that in times to come will help the policymakers in shaping the policy on insolvency, in particular in the area of mediation. Another area where I believe we have earned the respect of the industry is how we have stayed completely independent in our work. We may have been nudged by the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council to set up this institution. But in our work, we have maintained what is expected of an institution like us: complete independence in our thinking, in our work. We have, while working in collaboration with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs in many areas, in IBBI in many areas, also with other institutions in the country and overseas, maintained a very dignified, independent thinking and approach in our work. And I think that is also one of the reasons why all these institutions continue to have faith and belief in us. And I'm sure going forward, we continue to collaborate with these institutions and many others around the world. Personally, one of the projects of ILA, which is Patrick Ang International Short Story Contest on Insolvency and Bankruptcy, is again a very futuristic project where we have brought literature and insolvency together through the medium of literature, short stories. We have invited such great thinking by ordinary people, not necessarily professionals or who have domain knowledge of this subject, but those who may have at some point in time been at the intersection of insolvency, may have their family or through other friends faced some kind of interaction with the insolvency, have come forward to contribute stories of their perception from a social, cultural, economic prism. These insights through these stories, literary stories, provide us great amount of guidance in terms of how we should look at insolvency law, sometimes beyond the four corners of the law as is argued in the courts or sometimes manifests in the judgments through the jurisprudence. All this has been possible because we have a great advisory board led by Justice A.K. Sikri, a former judge of the Honorable Supreme Court and presently a sitting international judge of the Singapore International Commercial Court. But for him, we would not have made the progress that we have in the last 4 years. We are also mindful that we have a great task ahead of us. A lot has been achieved by IBC in the last 10 years, that we have been able to create a community of emeritus fellows at ILA. And I'm so humbled that we today have in the list of our fellows some of the legends, veterans, and those who have made significant contribution to the development of the modern insolvency law around the world and in India, of course, over the last 10 years or even more. We have a former Chief Justice of India as our Emeritus Fellow. We have a former Supreme Court Judge as our Emeritus Fellow. We have a sitting Judge of the Supreme Court of Singapore as our Emeritus Fellow. We have two past presidents of Insol International as our Emeritus Fellow. We have some of the top academics of the world as our Emeritus Fellows. And this gives us great amount of strength to be able to even rub shoulders with these people and seek some guidance or the other from them in one or the other way is a great inspiration for us, ILA community, and even those who are associated with us in some way or the other. We have our eyes now set on the future, next 10 years. What is it that we should be focusing on? There are 5 areas that come to my mind on which we have in fact already started some kind of work. The first and the foremost is personal insolvency law. At ILA, we believe that this is one area which now deserves top priority in the policy making. We've had 10 years totally focused on the development of the corporate insolvency law, but now it's time that we pay attention to this area of insolvency reform. And I'm so glad that Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board has set up an expert committee to look at this. One of the most important outcomes of this reform could be to meet the aspiration of over half of the population of India, that is the youths, the population that is less than 30 years of age. I'm talking of half of the population of India, which means half of over 1.5 billion people. We believe that we can create linkages of the insolvency law with the aspirations of these youths. I mean, how the aspirations of these youth can be fulfilled, and how the reforms in personal insolvency law can help in creating job providers rather than job seekers when it comes to the youth of the country. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the details and the nuances of that. You will, I'm surely, see in a very near future through the IBBI report a lot of the elements that the youth expect in a modern dynamic insolvency law, which will touch their lives going ahead. The second area that we would focus on is to assist the insolvency industry in the implementation of the cross-border insolvency and group insolvency reform, which is expected to be rolled out later this year or perhaps early next year. As you know, that the Parliament has already passed the law and the enabling provisions for making way for cross-border insolvency and group insolvency being introduced formally through the substantive provisions of the law. I'm hoping that going forward, as the rules for these two important critical area of insolvency are rolled out, we will see the insolvency industry embracing these two reforms with much awaited enthusiasm and make the best use of these to maximize the price discovery by asset tracing and by also ensuring that in group insolvency in particular, where many entities actually form a single economic unit, the price discovery is not slipped doesn't slip through the cracks which appear when on not all the enterprise are in insolvency together. The third area that we want to look at going forward is to provide a greater momentum to our focus on the global south. Through the insolvency reform, India has demonstrated to the world that we are capable of producing world class indigenous laws while borrowing from the best practices, while borrowing from the ancestrals' work. We have also kept our eyes on the ground and made sure that all the best practices are tweaked suitably to meet the needs of our industry, the dynamics of our country, the business culture, and also how we look at insolvency. And we have been very successful largely. And it is important that we share our knowledge and experience in this area with many other countries that are emerging markets, that are developing countries, particularly from global south, which look upon India as in some form or way a leading voice, a thought leader, which for a huge democracy that we are, with a large population and institutions that we are capable of creating models that could be suitably followed or adopted by them. Another area that we want to look at more deeply is how to continue to create a world class cadre of insolvency professionals in the times to come. We have borrowed from different professions that existed in the year 2016 to create streams to come into the insolvency profession. Over the last 4 to 5 years, whether it is the PGIP or the LLMs that have been issued, that have been started in the insolvency area, have cultivated young minds who have looked at this subject without carrying any baggage of the past. They are the first generation of true insolvency professionals who have focused only on this area as a discipline of profession, their career, on which perhaps they will spend their lifetime. It is important that we continue to invest in them, not just by education or capacity building, but also by recognizing that young professionals can be as capable, as experienced as we have seen in many other areas. We have to depend and rely on these youth going forward and provide more and more opportunities, open more and more opportunities for them. In the next 5 to 7 years, the landscape of insolvency industry will change. You'll have more and more young people coming in, and it is important that we invest in them, we trust in them, and we believe in them. This is where Insolvency Law Academy will continue to invest as we have been doing over the last 4 years. At ILA, we also propose that going forward, we will continue to build on our association and partnership with global institutions like the UNCITRAL, the World Bank Group, Insol International, and International Insolvency Institute. They have been very, very gracious and welcoming of ILA, very supportive. And I am actually quite overwhelmed and humbled by the kind of support that we have received from them. It has been very, very encouraging. And I'm hoping that we will build on this association and they will continue to support the work of ILA. And finally, I'm hoping that the footprint that we have created over the last 4 years will encourage more and more scholars and youths in the area of insolvency to come forward and support the work of ILA. either by becoming part of the organization formally or in some or the other form where they can contribute through their young minds thinking and bringing freshness into our thinking and help us in creating an insolvency system together with the government, together with the other institutions, together with the market, something that will be a great legacy for the youth of the country, which in a decades or so from now would really be in the on the front seat behind the wheel and playing a very very important role in the future of this country as they continue to do even today. Thank you so much.